I used to live on the merry-go-round at the playground, spinning all day long, sometimes to the point where I'd feel sick. And I loved the merry-go-round because it was simple, it was predictable, right? Whatever went around came around, always in a circle. And the older I got, the more I appreciated the predictability of it, but could stand the sickness that would come with it a little bit less. And I realized not long ago that you never actually get to get off the merry-go-round. The older you get, it just becomes a different kind, doesn't it? Because we still live by that cliche of what goes around comes around. We kind of have a functional belief in karma, if not a total belief in karma. And so when we're driving on our way to work and someone gets in front of us and they drive 5 miles an hour under the speed limit, that's what goes around. So we give ourselves permission to jump in front of them and go 10 miles an hour under the speed limit. And that's what comes around, because whatever they give us is what we give them, and that's okay, right? It's not about treating other people the way you want to be treated. It's treat them the way they treat you so you don't get walked on. Some people would call it eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Make sure they get what they deserve. In fact, Jesus talked about that rule. It was called a lex talionis, and the idea had been passed down from generation to generation. You could find it in the Torah, you could find it in other ancient writings. This idea where whatever went out was what was gonna come back, and there was always needing to be a balanced equation on each side of the equal sign. And then Jesus comes along and he starts teaching crazy talk. Ideas like, if someone slaps you in the face, turn your other cheek so they can slap that one too. Things like, if someone demands your shirt, give them your coat too. And he said, if someone makes you carry their luggage for a mile, you need to carry it for them too, that you need to volunteer for that. Can you imagine how cross-eyed people looked at him when he said things? I mean, he was essentially asking people to break the law that they'd grown up with and had recognized. What goes around comes around. Simple, predictable, same thing all of the time. And Jesus says, that's not the way I want my followers to live. In fact, Jesus said something along the lines of, change what goes around. Change what goes around by making sure what comes around isn't what went around. You see, so much of our life is spent getting even, retaliating, and justifying that. But what Jesus called us to was give more. Paul put it like this: if an enemy is hungry, feed them. If an enemy is thirsty, feed them. You need to overcome evil with good. And the argument that Paul makes in that is, when we retaliate in kind, when we give what came around, then evil wins. Then we're overcome by evil. So what Christians are called to be is cycle breakers. We're supposed to break the loop, not continue it on, not pass on what was given to us, but change the environment, change the atmosphere by changing what's going around. And that begins when we give back instead of getting even. And so, as difficult as that sounds, I think there's some practical steps for you and I to make sure that what comes around isn't what went around. I think first we need to pray, because that won't be easy. We're talking about our natural way of doing things. And so we need to pray for strength to go against the grain. Second thing is, I think we need to be willing to part with our rights. Because isn't that where this all comes from? We have this sense of right to equality, right? That I need to be treated in a way that is equal to how I treat other people. And when those things get out of balance, I need to even things up. So we need to be willing to part with our rights, sometimes part with our property even. And then lastly, practice, because we won't get it right. In fact, most of the time we're gonna mess it up and we're gonna fall into our natural way of things because we get caught in that cycle really easy. So it really comes down to try and try and try and do our best and do our best and keep praying and open our hands more and more to let things go. Because here's what I'm convinced of, and what I think Jesus and Paul and everybody else was saying. We are a part of God's strategy for making the world a better place. So often people will ask, why doesn't God fix the broken parts of our world. And I think He's trying to through His people. I think when He calls us to change what goes around by making sure what comes around isn't what went around, we're a part of the solution. We need to commit ourselves to getting off the merry-go-round, getting out of the cycle, and breaking the loop. And you just might change everything.